Pulling the Trigger is brought to you by Easy Vape North Shore, the industry's leading direct retailer of the highest quality personal vaporizers, e-cigs, vapes, and Canadian-made e-juice. Located at 987 Marine Drive in North Vancouver, or you can check them out online at www.easyvapecanada.com. You can also donate to my Patreon account at www.patreon.com/Mark Hughes Comic. Welcome to the first episode of Pulling the Trigger. I am Mark Hughes, and this is my podcast with the wonderful help of Taylor Murray, who will be doing the editing and producing. This podcast is basically, I'm going through my mental Rolodex of interesting people that I know, and I want to interview them, and I want to introduce people, the general public as it were, to people who they might not otherwise hear from or know about. I don't really know what else I'm doing. I just think it's kind of a neat idea. I happen to know a lot of interesting, strange, colorful, whatever you have type people. And why not? So, our first episode, I'm interviewing, well, an escort. Her name is Carmen Shakti, and we sat down, and I just wanted to know what her job is like. A lot of people have preconceived notions about women who work in the sex trade, particularly escorts. And as we discuss in the episode, in the interview, the sex trade and sex work is more than just women turning tricks or escorts. I even found out that the term prostitute is one that has a lot of negative connotations, as is John. It's always amazing to me when I talk to people how much I think I know and then how much I actually don't know. And I've been around people who work in the sex trade my whole life, ever since I was a kid. I mean, even I've dabbled in it. I mean, I didn't always feel like doing B&Es or robberies when I wanted to get high, right? And a girl's got to eat. But it's so fascinating to hear the human side of these stories. And what's going on for me right now in life is, this stuff all over the internet with sexual harassment and whatnot, and people coming forward with their stories of sexual harassment. It's actually pretty intense, and I thought this would be a good guest to have. She would be a good guest to have, considering all that's going on right now, and see what her opinion is of it. Personally, I know a lot of people are coming forward with it, and as a man who's been sexually abused, I always find that this is a tricky subject, because where do I fit in all of it? Do I fit in all of it? Should I say anything? Is it the same? Is it different? And no, there are differences. Some of it's the same, but when you're talking about this type of thing, it is a complicated issue, and how sexual abuse and sexual violence affects men is completely different in certain ways than it is women, and also how men can respond to it and how men can seek treatment for it is totally different too. For example, I've always joked about it, just because that's what I felt or thought was the only coping, other than doing drugs and maybe engaging in crime and violence, that was available to me. So joking about it is natural to me, but most women that I've ever met don't really joke about it outside of comedy. So it actually can be jarring. Some people actually think that it's further traumatizing to other people, me joking about my own sexual violence. And that's discussions that everyone's had, and I don't need to get into it again, but it's just to illustrate what the difference is. So, what's going on for me in comedy? Just open mics. As always, the Comedy Shocker will be January 13th at the Rickshaw Theatre. We have some new sponsors. We have Eden Medicinal, which is a dispensary. We have Fraser Valley Comedy. We have returning sponsors Easy Vape North Shore and Cat's Fantasies. If you want to buy early bird tickets, pre-lineup announcement tickets, ComedyShocker.com. Here's Carmen Shakti. So how's your morning been so far?
So far, so good.
Yeah? What does your morning ritual consist of?
Well, I'd like to say that I get up and do yoga and meditate and everything, but usually I just lie in bed and drink coffee and read the news on my phone.
So on the one hand, you're violating some of the terms of living in Vancouver, but on the other hand, you're doing exactly what everyone else in Vancouver does.
Pretty much, yeah.
Unless there's a phone to take a picture of it, no one will know if it happened or not,
Totally.
Right? Yeah. So I am sitting here with Carmen Shakti, and Carmen Shakti is... I'm going to let you describe what you do for work.
Okay. So I'm a somatic sex educator, sex worker. I do a mixture of sensual massage, tantra, and escort work.
Okay, so when you say escort, in layman's terms, or when you all those terms you just said, so massage, what was another fancy term I've never heard before?
Yeah, somatic sex educator.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a fancy word we like to throw around.
So sex education as in helping people with sexual dysfunctions and blocks and impotence, maybe?
Yeah, exactly.
And then you say escort, and by that you don't mean taking gentlemen to the dance, generally speaking.
Generally, no.
Okay. So you mean, to put it bluntly, prostitution. Okay. How do you feel about that term?
It's not my favorite term.
No, I mean, imagine not.
Yeah, it's pretty loaded. A lot of people in my industry prefer sex worker, and I personally prefer that as well because, you know, it's a job and it's not often considered a job like any other. Right, and
I've known and know many sex workers throughout my years, and it's funny. It's only people who know them or who work in the industry who use that term. It's too bad almost everyone else uses prostitution, though, right?
I know.
I don't like the term prostitution either because it does have... It's one of these words that's like polyamory.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, technically it's correct, but it comes with all kinds of imagery and connotations and stuff like that, usually negative ones, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, how long have you been doing it for?
About 5 years, 5 or 6 now.
Okay, and what got you into it?
Well, I was one of those hopeless romantics in my early 20s, and I married young, really dysfunctional relationship. Total mistake.
Nice, those are my favorite. Okay, go on.
No doubt. So after a while in this relationship, we had a lot of problems in the bedroom, in and out of the bedroom. And together we decided to see a sex worker to try and help us to connect. So I had a couple of sessions with this guy who was an amazing somatic sex therapist.
Okay.
And he gave me an erotic massage.
Oh.
And it was more like a sexological bodyworker thing. So he stayed clothed and I was nude, and he touched me and I didn't touch him back.
Right.
But it
touched you sexually? Like in your genitals?
Yeah. Well, the first session, we didn't even get that far. It was more of an emotional release.
Right.
But it was an option to get sexual. And the next time, it was more like, yeah, I just want to go for it and have as many orgasms as possible.
As you should.
Indeed. All for that.
Yep.
And then after that, it was, I realized how rare it was for me to feel that safe in a sexual situation.
Right.
And I wanted to do that for others. But I still had all these ideas about monogamy, and I had a jealous partner who
Right.
wasn't really comfortable with me going out and touching other men sexually.
Yeah.
Even though he'd agreed to that situation. So eventually that relationship ended, and I found myself running away to a room in East Van with my cat and a backpack full of clothes and no money. And then I thought, well, I want to take the training to do somatic sex work, but I don't have any money. So I thought I'll just become an escort and I'll save some money, get some training, and then do it the way I want.
Right.
So I connected with a madame, and it was pretty cool. She had a nice suite in West Van with mirrors on the ceiling.
Whoa.
I know. So, yes. And then I realized that a lot of my misconceptions about sex work were just that, misconceptions. So I'd had the idea that guys who go to see sex workers were maybe kind of sketchy, not very desirable.
Right.
And then
the ugly fat dude who happens to have some money and is a loser and can't score, basically,
pretty
right?
much, yeah. I had those, or the violent misogynist.
Right.
So then I found out that my clients were really nice and they were fun, and I mean, not every single person, but for the most part, it's like, wow, I like this. And the mirror on the ceiling's kind of hot.
Right. Oh, yeah, I guess it would be.
Totally.
Can you imagine trying to do rails off a mirror on the ceiling? That'd be interesting. Anyway,
that's some laws of gravity.
Yeah. That you would be very high.
Yes,
that
indeed.
was a stupid pun. I'm sorry about that. I commit to do better. Okay, that's interesting. You talk about the clients. I have a question about that. We'll get to that in a second. Mm-hmm. So, is this your primary source of income right now?
It is. Yes.
If you don't mind me asking, I know money's a bit of an impolite question, but I'll tell you mine if you tell me yours. How much do you make about a month?
It varies.
Okay.
Yeah, on a good month, maybe 8,000 and...
8,000?
Yeah. Slow month, maybe 5.
Okay, so you can definitely pay rent.
Yeah.
For sure.
Definitely.
And buy craft dinner rather than no-name brand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nothing but the best mac and cheese for me.
And, we're also joined by Carmen's kitty. What's your kitty's name?
Esther, the Pesterhide Meowler.
Oh, he's really cute. Or she?
She
is really cute. And
she's adorable.
She's just sitting there taking it all in, and she looks like she has some stories too. If there's time, we'll get to you, Esther.
She likes to watch.
Oh, yeah, you do. Yeah. Well, I'll make sure to leave you a bit of a tip as well.
And she was on Cats and Stacks.
Oh, wow. What's Cats and Stacks?
It's on this magazine called Tits and Sass. It's by and for sex workers. Awesome magazine.
Okay.
And they have a section called Cats and Stacks where you can take a picture of your cat with your week's earnings in stacks.
Oh, wow. You're a baller. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Neat. And what was the question I was going to ask? So that's your main source of income, and do you have a job?
No.
Whoa, okay.
I do occasionally do freelance writing.
Right.
But I've made maybe $200 from that in the last year, so it's not my primary source of income.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I would, 8,000 versus 200, yeah.
Yeah.
Or 5,000 on a bad month.
Yeah.
Okay, so... Do you like it? Do you like your job?
For the most part, I do. I mean, just like any job, there are things that I like and things that bother me at times.
Right.
But overall, I'm really happy.
Okay. Well, a lot of people are probably going to want to know, like, what are the things that you don't like? And I bet you people have lots of preconceived notions about what you don't like. And I have a sneaking suspicion the things you don't like aren't what they think they are. So like you said, everyone has a job that they don't like. For example, I'm a comedian. The stuff I don't like is the stuff off stage. So having to be at parties or group gatherings, and I don't like group gatherings, or having to write jokes, or having to edit videos, or having to network, or having to book, or having to contact bookers, all that kind of stuff. Having to deal with hard personalities and stuff like that. That's the stuff I don't like.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's comedy is, not to hijack the conversation, the time you see me on stage is actually the least amount of it. There's a lot more that goes into that. So what does your tough shit look like? the stuff you don't like. What does your paperwork and accounting look like?
Well, It's funny that you should say that the time you spend on stage is very little of the time that you spend working.
Yeah.
And it's similar for me. I spend time answering the phone, answering emails and texts, getting photo shoots done, writing ads, posting ads. That's probably more time than the actual time I spend with clients.
Right.
And usually the phone is the first point of contact, and that's the part that I don't like, because I can screen and weed out the douchebags and the misogynists, but I get some pretty awful messages from time to time. And, it depends on my mood in a day, because sometimes I'll just laugh it off. Sometimes I have fun at the guy's expense. I give them nicknames, time-wasty douchebag one, that sort of thing, in my phone.
They're like the flaky guys?
Yeah, the ones that try to get free phone sex. So what are your boundaries? Tell me again. Is oral okay? Will you sit on my face? Blah, blah, blah. And then they don't book. And there are times when I get really resentful about that. But when it comes to actual in-person time, I usually really get along with my clients, and if I don't, I find some way to discourage them from booking again. But there are difficult situations during the time with clients that come up.
Yeah, that when you mentioned someone saying, "Will you sit on my face?" It sounds like I have a regular job, and that sounds like my boss at work, who's my dad. So it's really tough. I totally get it.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
I was thinking, was sitting on your face a metaphor?
He's always asking me. He says he'll give me a raise, but anyway.
It better be one hell of a raise.
Yeah. So, okay, that's a perfect segue into one of the questions I had is so 3 questions. Good experience, single good experience you've had, single bad experience, and single funny experience. So single good experience, like a one memory of your work that sticks out more than others.
Okay, well, this one was really one that I still feel wonderful about to this day. And this person was referred to me by one of my Tantra teachers.
Okay.
And he was maybe 45 years old. And he'd never had a sexual experience with anyone other than himself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How old did you say again? 46?
About that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm guessing.
Okay.
But, yeah, and he'd taken a Tantra weekend course with my teacher, so he had a lot of book learning. But he had severe social anxiety disorder. He'd been off work for anxiety for a long time.
Wow.
Yeah, so I traded some emails with him. And he explained his situation. I half expected him not to show up. But he did. And so we're sitting at my table, much like you and I are right now. And he won't meet my eyes. He's just looking straight ahead. I said, "So how are you?" And he's like, "Good." So I thought, okay, I'm not going to get anywhere by talking to the guy. So I just said, "Let's get naked. I'll give you a massage." And I gave him lots of positive reinforcement, lots of love, and told him how much I respected him for having the courage to come and see me. And then we eventually went to the bedroom, and he kind of, at some point, it was like he came alive, and started meeting my eyes. He started kissing me back, and so basically I gave him this excellent first time experience. And then later on, I got an email from my teacher saying that this guy had been writing about me, and that in his writing he called me the healer, and that I'd totally changed his life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then I found him on Facebook sometime later, and he'd gotten into orgasmic meditation.
Oh, neat.
And he was like, "This is a picture of the blanket nest that I put the ladies in, and this is the type of lube that I use."
Oh, wow.
And I was just there like, yeah, I'm so proud.
You were his muse.
Yeah, it was great.
That's awesome. Wow, yeah, that's a good, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever gotten anyone off for their first time. I mean, no, can't claim that one. So no, I don't have a comparable story. But anyway, it's not all about me. All right, bad story. if you're comfortable sharing one.
Okay, well, let me think. I mean, I have some, it's not the majority, but I do have some violent experiences I've had, people just refusing to hear no and pushing past boundaries.
Right.
I actually did a police report on one like that recently.
How did the police respond? Did you tell them what you do and all that?
I do. Yeah. I did tell them, and it was tough, but they were generally pretty good about it.
That's interesting because you often hear the stories about where the police didn't do anything, even with a woman who wasn't doing sex work, and they just didn't care. But it sounds like, from what you're saying, they actually took it fairly seriously.
Yeah, well, they took a report. I haven't heard that they've followed up at all, but I guess these things take time. Right.
I guess in this case, though, you had his number, so he was easy to find.
Yeah.
I'm imagining. Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, that's shitty. Sorry to hear that.
Thank you,
because I can understand maybe your reluctance to even share those stories for personal reasons and professional reasons and for social reasons, because people listening to this, like, oh, we knew it.
Yeah.
That's what they're all like. You're putting yourself in danger. We'll get to swerfs in a second.
And I just want to add a little bit to that, that, people think that sex work is so dangerous, but there's so much violence that happens in marriages and relationships.
Good point.
Nobody's telling us not to get married or to criminalize all men who want to marry women or want to date women. And it's more of a larger problem of sexism in our culture and the justification of violence and the fact that the law doesn't fully support us yet that makes us easier targets in some ways. It's not that the work is inherently bad or dangerous.
My view on sex work as someone who's just I'm an outsider and sometimes consumer, but
who isn't?
Yeah, right. If you watch porn, you consume sex work, right?
Totally.
If you've ever been to the strip club, you consume sex work. But I don't want to speak to your experience, but just my observations are, it's just like it's a job pretty much like any others. Just the service you provide is maybe a bit different than the Joe punch clock or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And as long as you are doing, there's protocols and measures you can take to increase safety, but you're never 100% safe, just like a coal miner is never 100% safe, even if they have workers' compensation and a safety officer on site, right? And you're going to have days you like your job, and you're going to have days where it's hard to get up in the morning, but you have clients you got to see, and you got bills you got to pay.
Exactly.
Sort of like that, right?
That's so true, yeah.
And I keep on, the swerf thing keeps on, but we'll get to that in a second. So I got one more question. You got a funny story?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah. I imagine you have a few. But
Well, I'll tell a story from my very first year in the industry.
Okay.
And I was working for an agency that did outcalls.
Okay.
And I was called to go to a bachelor party at the River Rock.
Okay.
And normally going into a room with a bunch of guys who've been drinking would be a little, I'd be reluctant, but I got a good vibe from the guys. And so I was there, and it was one of these suites with the multiple bedrooms. And so the guy who was the best man had hired me, and he said he was doing coke, and when he does coke, he wants to be dominated really hard. But he didn't want any of his buddies to know that he liked to get tied up and taken up the ass and get spanked.
Nice.
So I had to do all that really quietly. Of course, the beer was all in the fridge in his room.
Yeah.
So I have these butt plugs and dildos all out on the table and a strap on, and I'm tying him up with...
This is in the bedroom and they're all in the main room? Okay, yeah.
But then sometimes they wouldn't knock, they'd just open the door and he'd be like, hide it! And so I'm hiding the dildos and everything.
Yeah.
And then this other guy, a good friend of his, comes in and he's been drinking and doing coke too. And he's like, oh, would you mind if he had this British accent, would you mind if I join you, mate? and I'm like, I don't think he wants that. And he's like, oh, come on, we take our turn, it'll be fine. And so I had to talk to him. I said, now, he's paid for his hour. Yeah. After that's done, I will come and get you and I'll see you.
Yeah.
But right now, I need you to go.
Yeah.
It's like using the I statements, NVC kind of thing.
Right.
And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, it's okay, just go.
Yeah.
shoving him out the door. And then his hour is up, and I go to get the drunk British guy. And I'm trying to get something happening, but he has a problem commonly known in the industry as Coke dick.
Right.
So he's sitting there and he's like, "Oh, isn't that the smallest dick you've ever seen?" And I said, "Oh,
you'd be surprised."
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, what's the right thing to say? Oh, I've seen smaller. Well, then that could be offensive.
Right.
So I'm trying, and then I kind of give up, and I'm lying there, and I scratch under my nose, and he's like, "Oh, now you're picking your nose. This has really gone to shit." And so his hour is up, and then the first guy wants to come back, so I kick him out of the room, and he's like, "Well, I really just want you to fuck my ass, but I don't want any of my friends to know, so can we just go into the bathroom and
So these are two guys who like getting their ass fucked when they're on Coke?
Oh, no.
Oh, this is...
Only the one
Oh,
did.
gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm back to the first one
right,
now.
but he doesn't want... Okay, gotcha.
It's so confusing.
That would have been very... stars aligning and neither of them know... That would have been... Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
And because that's something I really enjoy doing is fucking guys in the ass. So
neat.
It's always a treat when I get to do that at work.
Wow, yeah.
So I had him bent over the bathroom sink, and I start smacking him, and I'm like, "You're my bitch. I got you right where I want you." And then he's like, "Not so loud, my buddies can hear." I'm like, "Sorry, you're my bitch. You're my bitch. You're my bitch."
Stage whisper it.
Yeah, totally.
That's hilarious. Yeah. Yeah, getting to fuck someone in the ass and get paid for it. That's like if you do what you love, you never work another day for the rest of your life. Eh?
Exactly.
Too bad they weren't all like that, eh?
I know, right?
It's funny. I remember my funniest Coke story, because I'm a recovering addict. I used to do a lot of Coke. Is I was getting high with a guy one time, and he'd been buying all night, and I had no money. And just as we'd been into it for a few hours, and so we're down to like sort of the last of it though, right? But he's still got money. And from across the room, I'm sitting in one side of the room, he's sitting in the other. In a room smaller than this. It was a small apartment. He says, "Hey, did I ever tell you what I like to do when I get high?" And I'm like, fuck. This isn't going to be like charades or play Monopoly or anything like that. He liked to suck dick.
Oh,
right? Yeah.
And he's asking you.
Yeah. Well, and he's buying, so I can't say no, right?
Man.
Joke was on him, though, because I can't get hard when I've been doing Coke. No.
Like most guys.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, go ahead. So I was doing Coke while he's blowing me, and he's just going to town, and I'm distracted with the Coke, but nothing's happening. I think we both had a good time. I mean, it didn't bother me, other than it was kind of like, I just had, don't look down, keep doing Coke.
Right? We've all been there.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, interesting. That's a good story. Now, I keep on talking about swerfs. So for our listeners, my listeners, I don't have a name for this podcast yet, so as of yet unnamed podcast.
Cool.
A swerf is SWERF, and that stands for Sex Worker Exclusionary Radical Feminist. Have you ever had to deal with swerfs?
Online. Yes.
What kinds of things do they do or say?
Oh, they're so irritating. They say that because sex workers are propping up the patriarchy because servicing men sexually is so terrible.
Right.
And of course, female clients don't exist.
Right.
Even though I have quite a few.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me either.
Yeah. But anyway, I remember one time on Facebook, and I'm on Facebook under my legal name, so I can't be fully out under that name.
Right.
But I was playing close to the edge in a discussion about sex workers' rights.
Okay.
And I said something about how sex workers help people to be less lonely and to explore their sexuality, heal from trauma. And then this woman writes to me and she says, "Oh, you're just romanticizing prostitution." And I thought, well, this is actually just me speaking to my lived experience.
Right.
But they say that we don't have any agency. We're suffering from false consciousness.
Right.
So we're getting raped every day. We just are too stupid to realize it.
But they're there on your behalf to tell you that you're being raped every day. They know better than you.
They do.
Fuck's sakes. Man.
I know, right?
I can't. I see swerfs on my Facebook and online. I can't get into it too. I speak one. My thing is always the sex workers I speak to say and I defer to their experience whenever I'm speaking about sex work. But I can't argue too much because
Yeah.
I'm not a sex worker. I'm a consumer sometimes, and I'm a male.
Yeah.
I'm gonna quote unquote lose any argument, and I want to be an ally as much as I can, but I don't want to speak on your behalf either.
Totally.
I think most women I know who, especially sex workers, are some of the strongest women I've ever met. They would be examples of feminism if I could.
Totally.
Right? You don't need me fighting your fights. Not really.
No.
Like if they're talking shit and you're not there, I'll stick up for you.
Thank
but
you.
I don't need to argue for you because you got it, right?
Yeah, we've got
But
this.
fuck, do they ever piss me off?
Oh,
Some
me
of this.
too.
So I find there's two brands of sex, roughly speaking. There's the ones that say you're a traitor to feminism, and there's the others that say you're an unwilling victim.
Yeah, and both are insulting.
Yes.
In fact, I think I prefer traitor because at least traitors have agency.
Right.
That's more like Mata Hari or something.
Exactly.
You're a victim. It's a disempowering. It's a way to silence us because no matter what we say, oh, you're just saying that because you're so victimized. You don't know what's good for you, but I'll show you what's good for you.
Right. And they probably think, just stop doing it and get a proper job.
Right.
Yeah.
Because flipping burgers will get me enough to pay for this fancy apartment.
And you never get exploited doing that either.
Like I used to work in restaurants for quite a while before I got into this industry. Yeah. And the amount of times that I came home in tears because my boss was so mean to me, or the customers were mean, or I got stiffed and didn't make any money, compared to now where, I've had a few bad experiences, but it's probably on average maybe one really bad experience in 4 years. Right. So that's pretty good.
That's all things considered. Yeah. I mean, to take a cold analytic approach to it, if I may, the amount of money you're getting paid versus how many bad experiences you had. If you took someone else's work experience and they probably might have, their bad experiences would maybe not be as intense to a certain degree. Totally. But they're not getting paid as much. They don't have as much freedom. They don't have as much all these other things. So it just, again, coldly analytical and just the accountant would say, the cost-benefit analysis actually isn't that bad on, it's actually pretty good on your job.
Oh,
right?
Totally.
Yeah.
And living in poverty every day it leaves you way more vulnerable for exploitation.
Absolutely. I know construction workers who in 4 years have probably been injured more than once.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
like,
for sure.
I know a few guys who've had for $30 an hour. I know a friend of mine cut his thumb off.
Oh my
right?
God.
I can't remember what industry he was in, but I mean, I know he wasn't making $8,000 a month, or even $5,000 a month to do that.
That's right.
He had his toe cut off and amputated to replace his thumb, but he can't do that industry anymore. Yeah. So I mean, that people can get fucked in other ways too, right?
For sure.
If you work in a bank, you can get robbed. I did that one. I robbed a bank, so I know that one. You know what I mean? And that's for $20 an hour or less, maybe. Right?
Yeah, totally.
So, all right. Yeah, so that's Swerfs. What do you? So when someone comes at you, we'll break it up into two camps. So you have the hardcore conservative types who could be Swerfs, but could be like religious types, or could just be, you dirty whore that's like horrible and you're a harlot and all this kind of stuff. What do you say to them? Or what would you, if you had the opportunity to, if they would listen? Yes. Well,
I mean, I don't know that I could directly reason with them.
True. Yeah.
I'd at least say slut shaming is wrong and I deserve the same labor rights and human rights as anyone else in this country.
Right.
And that it's really nobody's business what goes on in my bedroom.
Absolutely.
As long as, I mean, if I was sucking dick on their front lawn, they might be able to say something about it, but I'm not doing that. Right. So.
Fair enough. And I know you kind of answered it, but we'll do it one more time. For those in the back, as they say, for the ones that say you're a victim, what do you say to them?
Well, I mean, it's a complicated issue because, and I can, to a certain extent, see where they're coming from because there weren't a lot of other options for me to make that kind of money. Right. But I could have gone a different route. I could have I could have found a way to go back to school if that was what I wanted and take something that would have gotten me training for a different job. But this is something I enjoy and I'm good at it and I'm able to make good money doing it. So I don't consider myself a victim, even though sometimes I wish that there had been more opportunities, just for some variety.
Right.
But yeah, we're not victims, but sometimes the lack of legal protection can make us more prone to be in violent situations.
Right, absolutely. And what are the laws these days? Prostitution is sex, I guess for lack of a better term, this, because the laws don't really cover strippers or porn agencies, but they could. Oh, they can?
Yeah, the conservative government wrote the laws very broadly. Right. Basically, selling a sexual service, and they don't define what sexual service is. So generally, I think they mean sex work where people touch, but they could mean lap dances, they could mean peep shows. Right. And selling is not illegal, but buying is.
So one half of the equation is illegal.
Yeah.
So it's still illegal.
And that was I'll just go back to the assault that I reported.
Okay.
And that happened outside of Vancouver.
Okay.
Because I traveled to his home.
Okay.
And because it was outside of Vancouver, the VPD has a really great enforcement policy about the sex work laws, where basically if it's consensual behind closed doors, they don't care. Right. But the RCMP has been involved in a lot of Sting's clients. So reporting, I left out my home address. I said, I'm not going to tell you where I see my clients. There's absolutely no reason for you to know that. Right. And I reported to the VPD, not to the RCMP. Right. And that was why. Huh. So, yeah, that's another barrier to justice that we receive. Right.
Yeah, it's that. I remember when they changed the laws, and I didn't totally understand how it worked, but because the Supreme Court ruled that having sex work illegal is violates the charter, if I remember correctly.
That's right.
And then the conservative response was to say, okay, we're gonna, because the Supreme Court, if I remember correctly, said that it leaves sex workers open to victimization, and there's no legal recourse if something happens. They should be able to form a union if they want to. Totally. All these things. You should be able to go to workers' compo if you're injured on the job. And so the conservative government's response was to say, okay, if you're a sex worker, it's not illegal, but if you're a consumer, it is. Yes. Thereby making it so you can't have clients.
Exactly. Right? And that makes so much sense. Yeah. It's like that. That's another thing I would say to Swerfs is there's nothing more feminist than a bunch of unemployed broke-ass women. Right. And that's what they'd be doing if they eliminated the sex industry. It's a caring profession dominated by women. Yeah. And these people that are supposed to be our allies, because I don't think you can call yourself a feminist if you're not for sex workers' rights. Right. But they're working against us having these basic protections that other people enjoy.
Well, one of the things I heard, and here, I'll make a statement that'll hopefully turn into a question. I hear this commonly. Anyone who procures sex work is a rapist. What do you think about that?
Well, I think I'd know if I was getting raped. I think I can tell the difference.
But honey, you don't really know what's going on. I don't think you understand how the patriarchy and oppression work. No, anyway.
Well, no, because a certain amount of dick just makes a woman dumb. Right. It's like the dumb stick. Right.
Nice. Yeah, you've had too much dick, baby. Yeah. You qualify for disability now.
Yeah, maybe all the cum goes up to my brain and makes me stupid.
Oh, wow, yeah. Maybe that's why I'm not so... Anyway.
Never mind that I use condoms.
Right. Yeah, that's one I've heard, and I just think, nah, that's a bit of a stretch. Anyone, because basically they're saying, because you're inherently exploiting women, you're thereby a rapist. Or another one, here's one. Anyone who's ever procured sex work is more likely to be a bona fide rapist.
Well, I've purchased sexual services. Does that make me a rapist?
I'm just going to say right now, I don't consent to any sex right now. So no means no. keep your hands where I can see them. And this is being recorded, so don't get any funny ideas. Unless you have cash. Okay. Switcheroo. Okay, so let's see what else I got here. Here's my amateur beginning podcast looking at my questions. Dating. What's dating like? Do you date?
I do. I'm actually I'm in a serious relationship now. I'm actually getting married next year.
Neat.
Yeah. And dating is tricky sometimes. Like I've when I started in the industry, I met someone and I told them right up front what I do for a living, and they were supportive. But then it became apparent as time went on that part of their draw towards me was that I had money.
Ah, wow.
And I was suddenly being expected to support this person.
Sugar mama.
Yeah, and I had a problem with that. I said, I'm not...
You're not an ATM.
No.
You might do ATM, but you're not an ATM. Sorry, I don't know if you do it or not.
I don't.
Okay. All right. Well, aren't you a prude? Jeez.
I am.
I need to interview someone more exciting.
I know. Well, see, I have boundaries, which is something we're not supposed to have.
Right.
Right. Yes. But then after that, I dated some people who said they were comfortable with what I did for a living, but didn't really want to hear about it, didn't really feel comfortable, and so I had a lot of experiences of being good enough to fuck but not good enough to bring home.
Yes.
And then as I became more out and I was in hooker monologues, by then I'd met the person that I'm with now. And he had some issues in the beginning, like, what do I tell my mother about what you do? And that's kind of a thing. His mother's 80 and she asks, so what do you do? And massage, and I teach Tantra, and I try to tone it down a bit for her. Yeah. And she went to see my show, and now she asks my my partner's sister, and she kind of says, she does massage, and then she turns the music up really loud. But
hooker monologues. That was a play.
Yes.
Can you tell me about your experience with that and what it was?
Yeah, so it was a collection of stories, about a cast of 10. We all wrote the play. We wrote our own monologues. Okay. I had 3 monologues in there. And one of them was called Coke Dick, which was another funny story. Right. But it was great. It was a diverse look at the industry and...
Similar to the vagina monologues, right?
But
exactly. With hookers or sex workers, right?
Exactly.
Oh. Yeah, I was going to go once. I think I even bought tickets, so you got my money, but I wasn't able to go that day.
Yeah.
You ever fallen for a client?
I did.
Or become, even if you didn't fall in love, fall in lust with a client?
Oh, yeah. Totally. I mean, I generally... There is sexual attraction between me and my clients. Yeah. But probably the most that I let myself fall for a client, there was somebody I saw pretty regularly for a while, maybe for a year or two. And I'd go to his house and it was before the fentanyl crisis, so we'd explore MDMA, we'd do mushrooms, and so probably that had something to do with it. Because when you're on MDA, you love everybody.
Absolutely. That's why I can't stand being around people who are high on MDMA. No, you don't love me. Wait 8 hours and you're going to come down. Shut the fuck up, man.
Totally.
Anyway, what was that? You said something. So, do you call them Johns? What do you call them?
I call them clients.
Clients, okay.
Johns is kind of like prostitutes.
Gotcha.
Considered disrespectful.
Derogatory.
Yeah.
Okay. What happened with him? Do you still see him professionally, or
he met someone, and so he's out of the game now,
off the market?
Yeah, and I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I'd told him that I'd developed deeper feelings. Right, but it didn't feel professional to cross that line, so I never did.
Right. I've dated escorts. Ranging from girls who have sugar daddies to girls who actually go out and put ads up on back pages and stuff like that. The relationships never lasted for reasons other than their work, but I'm no hero or anything, but I've a fucked up life that I'm not one to judge anyone for anything. My only boundary with them was never wanted to hear graphic details of their work. That's all.
That's
Just
fair.
when I'm with a lover or partner or girlfriend, because I'm pretty much non-monogamous. If they want to see other people, because I'm probably seeing other people. I don't. You're getting married, which I think, no marriage for me. But my biggest boundary is only, when I'm with you, if we were dating and we're sharing space together at that time, it's just you and me.
Yeah.
Anyone else, that's when you're with them. And when I'm with someone else, that's when I'm with them, right?
Yeah,
so
that's cool.
Sometimes I would be used as kind of a therapist, and he had this huge dick, and I have to be like, I don't want to hear that.
Yeah,
you know what I
talk
mean?
to your girlfriends about that.
There were two of them. One of them was a white guy, and one of them was a black guy, and I'm like, right?
I can see how that could be tough.
Yeah, and I remember I tried to be open-minded and supportive, but then I said, come on, I can't hear those stories. You got to talk to a girlfriend about that, not me, or another friend or a coworker. But
well, it's important to have those boundaries. Like with my partner, I tell him if something funny or something over the top happened at work. But if I had really hot sex with someone, I tone it down. I use euphemisms. I say we had a good connection. We got along. We had a rapport.
Yeah, because no matter how strong you are, how much of a connection and trust you have with someone, if you start hearing graphic detail, I mean, some people are into that. I understand that, but I'd say a lot of people are going to get a bit insecure. Like, hot sex with them and not me?
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Yeah.
I can understand that. So, what do you do how do you take care of yourself physically? Diet and exercise kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I have a pretty healthy diet. I mean, I'm not super strict about it, but I eat, lean protein, lots of green leafy vegetables. And I have a personal trainer. I work out about 4 days a week.
Okay.
I do yoga, although I've been doing a little less yoga and a little more weight training lately. Okay. But I keep fit.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it's one of those things like in other industries, you have to constantly take courses and read new reports. You have to stay fit in order to stay competitive or whatever, right?
Exactly, yeah. Nobody wants to see, flabby under... What's this? The
tricep
skin under your arm.
Yeah. Well, hey, don't kink shame people. Some people might like that.
Yeah, maybe some people would. There's that guy on Ally McBeal who liked it.
I know a few guys who actually like bigger women.
Oh, yeah, totally.
They like overweight women.
That's
thing.
Totally,
So taking care of yourself, which is a good segue into, do you have any self-defense training or anything like that?
I do. Yeah. I mean, I did martial arts as a teenager.
Oh, neat.
Did a lot of karate and a bit of jiu-jitsu, kempo. But I'm a little out of practice. But I have the old pressure points. Right. And there was one time when I was in a situation with a client, and he didn't take no for an answer, and I used a pressure point on his hand, and that smartened him up.
There you go.
And then it went from him trying to make me do things I didn't want to do to me with my fist up his ass.
Oh, nice.
Which, that was his thing. He said, oh, you don't want to do that? Stick your fist up my ass then. And I said, okay, fine.
All right. It's your hour, buddy.
Yeah. And I ran out of there when I was done. I didn't even stop to... That's another funny story. Do we have time for one
Absolutely.
more? Awesome.
We got we're actually doing good for time. So.
Oh, good. Okay. So
fill your boots.
So I was at the Wall Center Hotel, which seems to be a place where a lot of strange sessions happen.
Now that I think about it, my company actually services the Wall Center. I do fire protection. Really? I'm probably going to get fired now. But we inspect their fire alarm system. I bet you do. I've been in that building a couple times. I bet you there's lots of funny sex stuff that goes on in that particular building. It just seems like where it would happen.
It's the building. Yeah. It's like when you do this work for a while, you start to look at the different hotels, and it's funny how trends start to happen.
And there's patterns with certain types of people gravitate towards certain areas of town, certain buildings, certain etc. Anyway, so you're in the Wall Center.
Yes, Wall Center, and this guy decides he wants to fist me within the first 5 minutes.
Vaginal fisting?
Yeah. And I was not warmed up at all, and
Right.
I'm not that into fisting, so like I'll do
Me
it to
neither.
someone else,
Yeah.
but 2 fingers is plenty.
Yeah.
So
Brave.
so he starts doing his thing, and I said, I said calmly,
Yeah.
I said, I need you to stop that because you're hurting me.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, take my fucking fist. And I pressure pointed him, and I pulled his hand out,
Yeah.
and I said, dude, I said no.
Yeah.
And then he kind of grabs me and gets on top of me.
Shit.
And then I think, oh, fuck you, no way.
Yeah.
So I pressure point both of his hands.
Right.
And I flip him over, and I get inches away from his face, and I'm like, look, motherfucker, I get to hurt you, you don't get to hurt me.
Nice.
And if you don't respect that, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Subtext, with all your money.
Nice.
And then he says, fine, stick your fist up my fucking ass.
Oh.
And then I'm thinking, okay, I don't have to chart my escape route. I'm thinking about, okay, I'll leave the boots, I'll grab the bag, I'll run out there
Right.
in my underwear. So then I said, fine, and I put a condom over my hand, because at that point I didn't have gloves.
Right.
I was working at an agency, and I just had the supplies they gave me.
Right.
So I'm fisting him, and it's just ridiculous, because his ass was not clean.
Oh, nice.
The Santorum drip.
Yeah.
And then we're done the session, and he's trying to chat me up. Oh, do you want to give me your number? And I'm like, oh, hell no, buddy, we're done.
Yeah.
And I put on my clothes. It's about 6 a.m, and I'm wearing leather pants and this sparkly little top and a leather jacket, high-heeled boots. And so I get out in the hallway, and my hair is all filled with lube and my makeup's smeared. And then there are these 6 women who are all housekeepers in their identical uniforms, and they all look up and they all kind of giggle, and they're like, good morning. And I was just like, what's up?
You just had your hand up someone's ass.
I sure did.
It's so funny when you're describing the part where you told them, like, you don't hurt me, I hurt you. I just imagined an applause break from a bunch of women at that moment because you put him in his
Totally.
fucking place. Yeah. I mean, I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but whatever. I personally think more women need to learn self-defense and stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree.
Because, yeah, it'd be nice if we lived in a world where men don't rape women and men don't attack women, but unfortunately that's not the world we live
No,
in.
that's
and
true.
the police aren't always there, and there isn't always someone there. So I was a street kid, and I've been raped and all this kind of stuff, and I've had a lot of the things that happen to women I've had happen to me. And I remember after the first time I got trapped in someone's house or something, like, what was the first one was where I realized, oh, this guy's not going to let me leave or might not let me leave. I realized I got to be able to fight. And I was young, right? I was still a minor. And I remember one time a guy picked me up in the West End. And I didn't want to fuck him. I just didn't have anywhere to stay, and I thought he just wanted to get high. And I knew, okay, I'm probably going to have to deal with some advances, but I'm not fucking him, right?
Fair.
So then he goes, we get up there. He goes, okay, so let's start fucking or something like that. I said, no. And he goes, what if I won't let you leave?
Ugh.
And I said, I guess we're going to have a fucking problem then, right? And he backed down immediately. And that's when I realized it's like, and I'm not, of course, that's not always going to be the case, but I realized at that moment, like, I have to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Because I can't just let myself be a victim to shit like this.
Totally.
And I know women's experience is totally different.
Well, sometimes you can fight and sometimes you can't.
Right.
But generally, like, training is a good thing.
Absolutely.
Like, the experience I had recently, I judged the pros and cons, and it was just not something that I was able to fight my way out of,
Right.
so I just made the best of it.
Right.
But, in general, fighting is...
At least have the ability to,
Yeah,
right? That's, and I know that's a tough thing for me to say, and probably I'm going to get accused of mansplaining or something like that. But I don't know, man. I've been in fucked up situations, and I've been in ones where I didn't fight, and I've been in ones where I did fight. And sometimes when I did fight, it's still shitty stuff still happened.
Yeah.
But comparing the two, I would have rather been able to fight than not fight. I felt better for at least trying to fight than I did the time.
For sure.
Yeah. So, we've covered a lot of stuff here, organically, even better.
I guess the final question I would have, we're at about 50 minutes now. Oh, look at that.
Time flies.
Exactly. What would you have to say to people? Is there anything you would want people to know? The general public. I have no idea who's going to listen to this. I have a fairly large social media following. It's all kinds of people. But for the average person who might not know anything about what you do or thinks they know everything about what you do, do you have anything you want to tell people?
Well, I think that we do a lot of, and then this is something that doesn't get enough airtime in my opinion. It's generally sex work is seen as this sordid thing.
Right.
But really we do provide a human service, and I'm not going to say, oh, it's not even about sex. Most of them just want to talk and cuddle.
Right.
Because there's nothing wrong with something being about sex.
Absolutely.
And it's generally about sex, but it's also about other things. Like I have clients who say that when they spend time with me, it's the time in their lives when they feel the most loved.
Right.
And who's anyone to deny someone that experience if, two people are willing to make an arrangement? And we don't say things like, we don't say that psychologists have no meaningful conversations on their own time because they talk to people for a living.
Right.
And listen for a living. But we lump all these things onto sex workers, that sex workers can't have relationships because they're spoiled by having all this sex at work and all these other unfair stereotypes. So I would encourage people to think critically about these things and remember the human face.
Right. That you're people.
Yeah, which shouldn't be such a radical concept.
No, it's funny. Anytime sex is attached to anything, it all of a sudden, it's all this Judeo-Christian bullshit that goes along with it. It's women are punished for having sex.
Yeah.
Men are punished, not as much, but to a certain degree, for wanting sex.
Yeah.
But then in our society, it's like, as a woman, you're only valuable. Your only value is in your sex appeal. Then you're punished immediately for engaging in that. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And men are like, you have to be good with women or else you're a loser. And then we're not taught how to be good with women, and we don't know. And then you're a creep. And it's like, it's one of these, so many like mixed messages and double standards, right?
Exactly.
Pause it for 1 sec. So it's it's been quite an interesting talk. Your cat's been very silent. I might have to come back for another interview.
Yeah, she's been fed, so she's napping.
Yeah, I didn't get to hear any good stories from you. So where can people find you?
Well, my website is carmencourtesan.com.
Okay.
And it's a good way. You can Google search Carmen Shakti. I advertise on Leo List and Backpage.
I'll put some links in the podcast when I upload it.
It's a great idea.
Any final thoughts? Anything coming up? Any? I mean, normally if I was viewing it or interviewing an entertainer or someone, I'd be like, any gigs coming up? But you might have one this afternoon. But
I do actually.
Probably, I would imagine so. Anything? Final thoughts, statements, sentiments?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Yeah.
All right. You don't have to have any. That's all right. Well, it's been great talking to you. It's been informative even for me, and I thought I knew quite a bit about this stuff. So I hope that the listeners got something out of this. And my hope, the theme of my podcast is I want to interview interesting people, or people who do interesting things, or a combination of the two, right?
Cool.
And I don't want to use edgy or alternative, but it's basically anyone who is not, mainstream normal,
right,
has a regular job or etc., or maybe they have a regular job now but they didn't used to, or anything like that.
Right.
Like my next guest, hopefully, if the appointment doesn't get canceled again, is a convicted murderer.
Okay.
Who's out on parole right now. He's been out for a long time, and we're going to talk about that. And then my next guest, fingers crossed, will be someone who runs a swingers club. Right,
fun.
so just these kinds of things. So thanks for being my first guest.
My pleasure.
Thanks for your honesty and being open. I appreciate that. And I guess that's it. And I don't know how to shut down a podcast yet. So bye.
Bye.